What if I told you that everything you believe about reality is backwards? What if the world you think is solid and fixed is actually more fragile than a dream, more responsive than the most advanced computer, and completely dependent on something you carry within you every single moment of your existence? Scientists working in laboratories around the world are uncovering evidence so shocking that it forces us to reconsider not just our understanding of reality, but our very identity within it. The evidence suggests that the universe isn't the external objective structure we assume it to be. Instead, it's emerging as something far more personal, far more responsive to consciousness than we ever imagined possible. This isn't science fiction. It's the cutting edge of quantum physics, and it's revolutionizing our understanding of existence itself. The implications are staggering. If these scientists are correct, then you are not a passive observer of reality. You are actively creating it. You are not trapped inside the universe. The universe is trapped inside you. And the key to understanding this lies not in complex mathematics, but in a simple experiment that anyone can understand. Consider this. When researchers examine subatomic particles, they discover something impossible according to everything we thought we knew about the physical world. These particles don't exist in specific locations until someone looks for them. Before observation, they exist as pure potential, as waves of probability spreading through space like ripples in a pond. This isn't metaphor. This is measurable physics. The famous double-slit experiment reveals that matter itself behaves like a ghost until consciousness interacts with it. Light particles, electrons, even entire atoms exist in a state of superposition, simultaneously everywhere and nowhere, until the moment someone measures them. At that precise instant, the quantum field collapses into a single definite reality. Einstein once dismissed this possibility, claiming that God does not play dice with the universe. But decades of experimentation have proven him wrong. Reality does not exist independently of observation. Instead, it appears to be constructed in real time by the very act of conscious awareness. Physicist John Wheeler, one of the most respected minds in quantum mechanics, went so far as to propose that the universe itself is participatory, meaning that reality doesn't exist until conscious beings participate in its creation. His famous quote, "No phenomenon is a real phenomenon until it is an observed phenomenon," has sent shockwaves through the scientific community. But quantum physics isn't the only field challenging our assumptions. Research in neuroscience reveals that the brain itself operates more like a receiver than a generator. Instead of creating consciousness, the brain appears to be tuning into a vast field of awareness that exists beyond the physical limits of the skull. Dr. Penrose and Dr. Hameroff's research into quantum consciousness suggests that the mind operates on quantum principles, interacting with a non-local field of information. This would mean that what we experience as our thoughts are actually connections to something much larger, a cosmic database of consciousness that we can access but don't create. The implications are profound. If consciousness is the fundamental building block of reality, then our individual awareness is not limited to our brains. Instead, we're like radio receivers, picking up signals from a universal frequency of consciousness that connects everything in existence. This connection isn't just theoretical. Ancient wisdom traditions have been teaching this principle for thousands of years, though in different language. The Eastern concept of Maya, the idea that the physical world is illusion projected by consciousness, aligns perfectly with modern quantum discoveries. The Western mystical tradition's principle of as above, so below suggests the same fundamental truth, that the outer world is a reflection of inner consciousness. What this means is that reality is far more flexible than we ever imagined. The solid, unchanging world we think we live in is actually as malleable as thought itself. Every moment, our consciousness is actively shaping the quantum field, collapsing infinite possibilities into the specific version of reality we experience. This isn't mystical poetry, it's emerging science. And once you understand this principle, everything changes. You begin to see that you are not trapped inside an unchanging world. Instead, you are the active architect of your experience, constantly creating and recreating reality through the power of your observation. But here's the challenge. Most of us are unconscious architects. We're creating reality all the time, but we're doing it from a place of limitation, fear, and conditioning, rather than from our true potential. This happens because we've identified with something called the ego program, a sophisticated but ultimately false sense of self that keeps us trapped in a limited version of reality. The ego program is like a character in a video game. It's a constructed identity based on past experiences, societal conditioning, and inherited beliefs. It's the voice in your head that says things like, "I'm not smart enough," "I'm not worthy," or "this is just how things are." But here's the crucial insight. This character is not who you really are. You are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are not the sum of your experiences and conditioning. You are the awareness that observes all of these things, the consciousness that can step back and notice the ego program running its scripts. This distinction is absolutely critical because it reveals the true nature of your power. When you identify with the ego program, you become trapped within its limitations. You accept its fears as reality, its beliefs as truth, and its limitations as permanent conditions. But when you recognize yourself as the awareness behind the ego, you reclaim your role as the conscious creator of reality. The ego program operates through what we might call the reaction pattern. It's constantly scanning the environment for threats and opportunities, then generating appropriate responses based on past programming. This system served our ancestors well when survival was the primary concern. But in the modern world, this reactive pattern often creates the very problems it seeks to solve. Every time you react with anger, fear, or judgment, you're not just expressing an emotion, you're actually programming your reality. Because in a consciousness-based universe, your reactions don't just reflect your beliefs, they reinforce them. They become part of the feedback loop that shapes your experience. Think about it. When someone cuts you off in traffic and you respond with rage, what's really happening? You're not just expressing anger. You're telling the universe, "I live in a hostile world where people don't respect me." And the universe, being perfectly responsive to your consciousness, begins to create more experiences that match this belief. But here's the powerful truth. You can break this cycle at any moment. You can choose not to react, not through suppression or denial, but through genuine detachment, recognizing that the situation triggering your reaction is not about you, but about the beliefs and conditioning of the person creating the situation. This is what the masters have always understood. When someone acts from ignorance, you can recognize their behavior as a reflection of their own inner state rather than something happening to you. This isn't passivity, it's conscious choice. It's recognizing that you have the power to determine how you respond to any circumstance. The Stoic philosophers called this the art of not being disturbed. Eastern mystics called it the middle way, finding balance between attachment and detachment. But regardless of the name, the principle is the same. Your power lies not in controlling external circumstances, but in controlling your response to them. More importantly, when you stop feeding negative situations with your emotional energy, they lose their power to create more of the same. This is why detaching from negative events is the first step toward changing them. You literally starve the old reality of the energy it needs to continue existing. But detachment is only the beginning. The real power comes when you learn to consciously program your reality using the principles that govern a consciousness-based universe. This involves working with what we might call the software of your subconscious mind. Your subconscious operates like a computer program running in the background. It's automatically executing millions of lines of code every second. Beliefs, assumptions, emotional patterns, and behavioral scripts that you acquired through repetition and conditioning. Most people are completely unaware of this programming, which means they're running whatever software was installed by their environment rather than consciously choosing what they want to experience. The key insight is that your subconscious doesn't distinguish between imagination and reality. It processes images, emotions, and thoughts as equivalent experiences. This means that you can literally rewire your reality by changing the programming in your subconscious mind. This isn't positive thinking or wishful thinking. It's based on the principle that your reality is always a perfect match for your deepest beliefs about yourself and the world. These beliefs operate like a command program, instructing the universe what kind of experiences to generate. The process involves what we might call conscious reprogramming. Instead of letting your subconscious run on whatever beliefs were installed through conditioning, you deliberately install new beliefs through repetition, visualization, and emotional immersion. You literally rewrite the code that creates your experience. For example, if you want to experience abundance, you don't just think positive thoughts about money. You inhabit the emotional state of someone who already has abundance. You feel grateful, confident, and generous. You visualize yourself making decisions from a place of plenty rather than scarcity. This isn't pretending. This is training your subconscious to recognize abundance as your natural state. When you do this consistently, the universe begins responding to this new programming. Events start aligning to support this expanded reality. Opportunities appear that were always there, but were invisible to the old programming. The reality you inhabit shifts to match the beliefs you've installed. But remember, this only works when you're working from your authentic self, rather than the ego program. The ego will try to convince you that you're being unrealistic, or that you don't deserve what you're imagining. But your true self, your deeper awareness, knows that you are unlimited consciousness having a human experience, not a limited human trying to have a spiritual experience. The ego program is powerful, but it's not who you really are. It's a tool that can be useful when properly employed, but it's not the master of your reality. When you recognize this distinction and learn to operate from your authentic self, rather than the programmed ego, you begin to master the art of conscious reality creation. Now we come to the most profound aspect of this understanding, the mastery of reality itself. You've learned that consciousness creates reality, that you're not trapped by circumstances, but are actively creating them through your beliefs and responses. But the deepest truth goes even further. It reveals that you are not bound by linear time, that all possibilities exist simultaneously, and that you have the power to shift between different versions of reality at will. This challenges one of the most fundamental assumptions about human existence, that we move forward through time in a straight line, that the past determines the present, and that we must struggle through logical progressions to achieve our desires. But quantum physics and consciousness research suggest that time is not linear. It is a construction of the mind designed to help us process the overwhelming complexity of simultaneous possibilities. In the deepest levels of reality, beyond the surface appearance of linear time. All possible versions of your life exist simultaneously in the quantum field. Every alternate path you've ever considered, every person you might have become, every circumstance you could experience is already there, encoded in the field of infinite potential. The only reason you experience one linear timeline is because your consciousness is currently tuned to a specific frequency that corresponds to your current beliefs and expectations. This is why certain experiences feel like they've happened before, why you sometimes get the eerie sense that you're reliving a moment. It's because you're actually shifting between parallel versions of reality that have different relationships to linear time. The past isn't actually behind you in the way we assume. It's more like a frequency that you can tune into at will. What this means is revolutionary. You do not need to work toward your desires over time. Instead, you can step directly into the reality you want to experience by shifting your consciousness to the frequency where that reality already exists. This isn't metaphor. This is how consciousness actually operates at the quantum level. The process of doing this involves what we might call the frequency shift technique. Instead of thinking about what you want and then waiting for it to appear in linear time, you begin with the end result, experiencing the emotions, sensations, and perspective of someone who already has what you desire. You don't imagine having it in the future. You feel as if you already have it now. This shift in perspective changes the quantum signature of your consciousness. Instead of broadcasting a signal of seeking or wanting, you begin broadcasting a signal of having and being. The universe responds to this signal by reorganizing reality to match the new frequency you've established. This is why miracles seem to happen instantaneously for those who understand this principle. They're not actually creating something new from nothing. They're accessing realities that already exist and shifting their experience to align with those possibilities. The common factor isn't time or effort. It's the complete absence of doubt about the reality they're accessing. Think about it. If all possibilities already exist in the quantum field, then what you call achieving your desires is really just recognizing what was already available. What you call changing your life is really just changing which version of your life you're consciously experiencing. The masters of this art understood this principle intuitively. They didn't work to improve their circumstances. They simply shifted their awareness to a reality where their desired circumstances were already present. They understood that they were not becoming something new, but rather remembering something that had always been true about the nature of existence. This shift requires what we might call radical assumption, not just believing something is possible, but assuming it as fact regardless of current evidence. It's the willingness to experience gratitude for something before it appears in linear time, to feel joy about circumstances that haven't yet manifested, to align with a reality that seems impossible from the perspective of the current timeline. But here's the key insight. The moment you truly inhabit the emotional and vibrational state of having already received what you desire, the universe has no choice but to reorganize itself around this new reality. Not because it's magical, but because you have literally shifted to a parallel timeline where this reality is your present experience. This is why the most successful people often seem to have an almost mystical certainty about their abilities and outcomes. They're not deluding themselves. They're operating from a frequency where their success already exists. What appears to others as bold confidence is really just the natural result of having already shifted to the timeline where their desired outcome is present. The process of making this shift permanent involves what we might call reality anchoring, using repetition and emotional intensity to establish your new reality as your baseline experience. This isn't wishful thinking or visualization exercises. It's a conscious process of programming your quantum field to consistently resonate with the reality you want to experience. The challenges that once seemed insurmountable will begin to dissolve not through struggle, but because you've shifted to a timeline where those challenges simply don't exist. The obstacles that appeared unchangeable will realign because you're no longer broadcasting the frequency that creates them. This is the ultimate freedom, recognizing that you are not a victim of circumstances, but the conscious architect of your experience. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to demonstrate your mastery of reality creation. Every setback becomes a signal that it's time to shift to a more supportive timeline. Every limitation becomes the invitation to discover the broader reality that exists beyond apparent constraints. The truth is that you have been creating reality all along. You've just been doing it unconsciously, responding to conditioning and programming, rather than consciously directing the process. Now you have the tools to take control of this process. Now you understand that you are not trapped by the world you've created. You are the only one with the power to change it. This isn't just a philosophical concept. It's a practical protocol for transformation. When you truly grasp and apply these principles, your entire relationship with existence changes. You stop asking for permission to live your dreams and start expecting them as your natural state. You stop struggling to achieve what you want and start experiencing it as if it has always been true. The universe is not a fixed external structure that you must navigate. It is a fluid, responsive field of consciousness that perfectly mirrors your internal state. Every thought, belief, assumption, and emotion is constantly shaping this field into the specific version of reality you experience. This is not something that happens to you. It is something you do moment by moment, whether you're aware of it or not. The awakening comes when you realize that you have never been separate from the source of all creation. You are not a small human being trying to connect to something larger. You are unlimited consciousness experiencing limitation through the lens of conditioned belief. When you step back into your true identity as the creator rather than the creation, reality itself becomes your playground rather than your prison. This is not the end of your journey. It is the beginning of conscious living. The moment you stop being a victim of circumstances and become the master of your reality, everything changes. The world doesn't become perfect. It becomes responsive to your true nature. Challenges don't disappear. They become opportunities to demonstrate your mastery. And limitations don't vanish. They become invitations to expand beyond what you previously thought possible. You are not trapped inside the universe. You are the universe experiencing itself through human consciousness. And now you have the keys to conscious creation. Now you can stop waiting for reality to change and start creating the reality that reflects your highest vision of what life can be. The simulation has been running your programming long enough. It's time for you to take control of the interface. It's time for you to become the conscious architect of your existence, operating not from the limitations of your conditioning, but from the unlimited potential of your true nature. Your new reality is not something you'll create in the future. It's something you access in this moment by remembering who you really are.